Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lynda McNally. I am the Healthcare Account Manager with Netdirector, and we're very happy you were able to make time for us. We're going to talk a little bit today about what an API can do for you, but also where it falls short in achieving your goals of interoperability with your business partners. Just a little bit about Netdirector. We were founded in 2003, so we are almost eligible to vote. We're based in Tampa, Florida, and everything we do is based on a very secure cloud-based architecture. We provide integration platform as a service, or iPaaS, and we handle over 10 million transactions per month in both our mortgage banking and healthcare operations. We're both HIPAA and SOC 2 Type 2 certified. Our presenter today is Josh Schofer. He is our Healthcare Operations Manager, and I would like to brag just a little bit about him because Josh has such a unique background encompassing education, business and product development, implementation, and client support and training, which give him a very unique ability to not only lead his team in creating successful, repeatable integrations, but to be proactive in addressing clients' even unstated needs. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Josh. He's our real expert here, and I think you'll enjoy your time with him.
Well, thank you, Lynda. And again, I'd like to welcome everybody. We're here today to talk a little bit about this term we've heard in the industry called an API. Now, the reason that API has come about, or even the reason that we're here talking about this, is because where we are currently in the healthcare space is kind of, for lack of a better term, an ecosystem that thrives on chaos. There's lots of different players in the marketplace. There's lots of different systems and lots of different unique specialties that people are bringing into the industry that need to create connections and exchange data with everybody else within the system. So as companies come on board, or as healthcare organizations come on board, they start looking at things they want to do to expand their business. They start asking questions like, I need to get my data to someone else, or I need to get data from somewhere else. I want to integrate my system with another system. And they run across these issues. They come up with things like, okay, so they have strict rules. How do I get that data from one place to another? How do I format it? How do I get that information in a method that somebody else wants? And sometimes you don't have that endpoint. You don't have that method of being able to do it. And you want to be able to do this, especially with a lot of companies that are out there. As you expand your business base, you want to be able to do this quickly and be able to expand your business without having to go through integration after integration after integration. So, you know, the term API has come up. Now, what is an API? Let's take a second and step back and say, what is an API actually doing for us? A lot of times we hear that term, and it's really just an application programming interface. That really means it's a method of talking to your data. It's important to understand that it takes two of these APIs for data to be exchanged. Typically, a company will create their own API. This is where a lot of CEOs and CFOs and chief operating officers go, hey, we need an API, which is great. It gives you an opportunity to interact with your own data in your own system and be able to get that data out. The reality is you've got to communicate with another system. So you need an API or some other endpoint on the other end to exchange that data. And that's where the difficulty comes in, because you're not in control of all of the different APIs that are out there. You want to kind of think of it like doing business internationally. There's lots of business opportunities throughout the world, but each opportunity in each country is going to have its own language, it's going to have its own customs, it's going to have its own dialect. So if you really want to have business across the globe, you're going to need to find a way to talk each of those individual languages. There's two different ways you can do that. You can become fluent in all those languages, you meaning your company, or you can hire a translator, somebody who's done that, somebody who already knows the language and had experience with all the different customs that are out there. So the question is, which one's more cost effective? And we believe that the cost effective solution is to go with a partner that is your translator. So it's important to understand that an API itself, I created an API doesn't solve your problem. It allows you to take a step in the right direction. It creates some consistency and allows you to kind of get into that area and start working on it, but it doesn't solve the problem. Now, why is that? Well, here's the reality. Even if an API exists, and I'm going back to if you were to try and take this in-house yourself, or what companies have come across as the challenges they come across when they're doing this, is you have to create the API itself. So there's development involved. The reality is there's development involved on the other end as well, because your API may be great for talking to your own system, but you may have to change it slightly to work with system A or change it slightly to work with system B. So there's ongoing development that's required for even an API that exists. And like I said, you're going to have to reconfigure that for each partner that you have. As we talked about, you want to be able to expand. So you've got to have some method of being able to alter that API to talk to the different endpoints or different APIs that are out there. And you'll have to do this over and over and over again to try and get that data going back and forth, or that message going back and forth. So the reality is there's two different ends of the spectrum. I'm going to give you some examples of APIs that are out there, just in my experience. We're going to go from a very simplified, straightforward, and what I consider easy message to one that is much more complex. So let's start with the easy one. These are what I call simplified API endpoints, and these are designed typically for very small segments or very deliberate data exchanges, things like billing, telehealth, teleradiology. Each of those is kind of pared down the things that they need to a very specific set of data points. And what they do is they provide a method for their partners or getting that information out to send data simply. Typically, they're using a standard format. There are several industry standard formats and connection methodologies within healthcare. We've all heard of HL7, we've heard of FHIR and CCD and CCDA, and there's lots of them that are coming out. They're always trying to evolve those to make them better for you. But what these endpoints typically do is they use a standard and they allow most of the processing to take place in their own system. So if you're talking HL7, which is a standard text-based message, typically, as long as you've got an HL7 that's formatted correctly, they'll accept it, take it, and they'll do the matching, they'll do the updating, they'll do all the thing with the processing on their end. That's why it's very simplified. All you have to do is be able to match their method. The limitations are they're typically limited in scope. Like I mentioned, they're focused on, for example, patients and charges, and that's it. If you want to schedule appointments or not do appointments or add any other information beyond that, these endpoints don't provide you the opportunity to do that. They do allow for push and pull. Depending upon how they set up those API endpoints, they are able to push data out and they are able to receive data. We're going to see in a minute as we move into the next other end of the spectrum, which is a complex API library, but that's not always the case. Now, like I said, we're going from two different extremes here. The simplified ones, you send a message, it's done. The other end is usually reserved for a lot of the larger EHRs, a lot of the larger systems that are out there that are trying to provide as much data as possible. Well, rather than them creating an API that does all the work for you, they create a library. And this library is a bunch of different endpoints. Each endpoint provides a little bit different piece of data. And they expect you as a client or you as a trading partner to connect to those individual APIs that you need and get the data that you want. Typically, they're going to push you to use a particular format. They're going to push you to use a particular connection method. And their requirements for data and security can often be very unique and changing, which is a concept we're going to come back to. So again, when we're talking about a library, they're often very extensive. They have lots of data that's available. They've got APIs to pull appointments and send appointments and update charts and get allergies and get documents and send documents and lots of different things. But a lot of the work is going to be on you to make that match, to determine where it's going to go, to do the logic that's associated with it. It usually requires robust authentication. As I said, it's a lot of data. So they want to make sure that you're the right person to get in there and get that data. So there are several levels, whether it's HIPAA or high trust, that require a lot of those things to be specific. Whether you're using OAuth 2, whether you're using certificate-based authentication, there's lots of different things that can come into play. Now, all of that factors into you having to configure your API to talk to that other endpoint. So the thing is, with these complex API libraries, we want to make sure that you can do the things you need to do. And you may think, oh, great, I can create it, I can set it, and I can forget it. That's a common concept that a lot of companies come up with. Oh, great, I'm going to create an API. It's great, we can spend the dollars now, and then we won't have to really spend dollars on that moving forward. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because even if you only have an integration with one partner or two partners, if you ever want to expand, of course, you've got to do multiple integrations there. But what happens if the partner that you have makes a change? As we talked about with the larger companies, the larger EHRs, they are going to be on the forefront of that security and of that technology and of the new formats. So you're often going to be required to move forward and adopt things that you may not necessarily be ready for. So that means that you're going to have to change your API to integrate with that particular API. Like I said, in addition to that, there's a lot of maintenance and security responsibilities. You're connecting to somebody else's system. You're responsible for making sure your data is secure. You're responsible for managing errors. So, the reality is you've got to manage a lot of that information and monitor it on a long-term basis, because you want to make sure that your data is going across, that you're not sending the wrong data, or you missed a comma somewhere. And it does happen. But the truth is, you're going to have these types of changes that are going to take place even after you create that initial implementation. So, all systems kind of fall within those range. There's some of them are very simplified, some of them are very complex. You're usually going to find that most of the integrations in the healthcare space are somewhere in between. And the other thing to think about is you want to expand your business, both size and functionality. That's an important thing to remember. When you're talking about ways that I can solve this problem, you can do it two ways. One, I can hire staff and become my own best asset and learn all the different languages and do all those things and spend the money to make that happen, which is great. But are you an integration company, or are you a software company providing a service? A lot of our experience has been that companies don't want to be in the integration business. They want to be in the software business. They want to be in the solutions business. So, one way you can do it is to bring all of it in-house, and it can be done. There's costs associated with that. The other way to do it is to find a partner. Now, what should you be looking for when you're finding a partner to help you with this integration? Regardless of the method that they do it, the things you want that partner to be able to do is to scale with you. And that's where scaling in multiple directions becomes important. One, you want to scale size. I want more integrations. Great. More trading partners, more people that I'm interacting with. But the other thing you want to be able to do is, as you expand your offering or your solution, you want to be able to expand the functionality even within the integrations that you already have. Again, these aren't set and forget. If you get to a set and forget format, then you're always going to get the same data every time. If you, with client feedback, determine, hey, I want to do something more, excuse me, then you're going to have to redo that integration. So you want somebody who can scale both size and breadth of offering that you've got. The other thing you want them to be able to do is to minimize the internal workload on your own staff. The reality is you're never going to be able to truly get rid of connection people on your side. Your technical folks are still going to have to be communicating with somebody, because it's your data and potentially your endpoint that you're working with. So you just want a partner that's going to be able to minimize the amount of effort that you've got. And there's multiple ways you can do that. You can have a partner who you pay for all the work, offers a service that does that. But you also want somebody that's going to provide that maintenance for you, be able to look at it for a long-term basis. You also want people that are going to have the expertise in the industry. Like I mentioned initially, you want somebody that speaks the language. So you want somebody to be able to come in and consult with you and not just say, here's the way it works. You want somebody that's going to listen to you and figure out what your needs are, to be able to adapt the endpoints that they know about and their functionality to be able to make your business grow. And like I said before, it's the flexibility. You want to make sure that you're providing you've got a partner that works with you to be able to make things work effectively for you. Like I said, there's two ways to make that happen. You can hire somebody that does point-to-point integrations for you. so that you're creating an endpoint with system A, you create an integration with system B, with system C, with system D, which is great. You've got a partner that builds those integrations for you. But this is how it often turns out. It's just a bunch of different connections that you've got with no consistency, and you're still managing all those connections. Your partner is helping you manage all those connections. That's a point-to-point partner that you've got. The other way that we've got that you can do that is through hub-style integration. Now, what a hub-style integration is basically you create an endpoint on your side that sends and receives or talks to a partner that you have. So you know that it's going to be the same data types, the same data format, the same connection methodology every time. You can build your system confidently knowing that the data you're going to get back is always going to look like this. I don't know, from a developer's perspective, and my experience has been, if I know I'm getting it the same way every time, I'm golden. If I have to worry about variations in that, it becomes much more difficult for me to be able to do that. Well, what the integration hub does for you is then you are sending that data in a format. Now, I'm going to use a couple of words here that may or may not be familiar to you. I may send, as a company, to my integration partner a JSON message, which is just a format of data. Well, one of my partners that I work with wants to receive that as a JSON. So great. My integration partner will translate that, send it off to the connection as a JSON. Well, I have another one of my trading partners that wants to receive that as a XML through a SOAP endpoint. If you're familiar with SOAP, different web service endpoint that's there. That's great. I'm still sending this information as a JSON to my trading partner. My trading partner does the heavy lifting of creating that XML package and doing the SOAP envelope and all the things that are associated with it, and they send it off to that trading partner. Well, I may have a third or a fourth or a fifth that all use the standard HL7 format. Great. My integration hub partner is doing all that work for me. So the end result is the same. I'm sending to multiple people using a partner. The difference is that, I still have individual connections that potentially have to be managed, or do I have one connection that I have a partner that's managing? So again, it's multiple ways to look at that. So, it's our experience and my experience in looking at both of those that the cloud base has a huge amount of integration benefits. One of them is you've got one connection to manage. You can manage the connection to your trading partner. And the advantage there is if you expand it, your trading partner can expand their functionality. All you have to do is decide, I need more. Your trading partner or your hub partner will look at that and go, okay, great. Well, then I need to update all of these. So no longer is it you that's doing that, your partner's doing that for you. Your scalability is huge. As you start to build your connections, your trading partner should be able to take an existing connection, duplicate it, tweak it, and make it work in a very short period of time. You don't want anybody that's developing integrations. You want somebody that's configuring integrations, because nobody wants to wait for the timeline of a sprint, if you're familiar with development terminology, a 2-week period of getting things done, to get my integration working. I have a partner, I need to get it working. And that's the rapid configuration. Typically what happens is you go to your trading partner and you bring them in on a kickoff meeting and you hand off. It's kind of nice. You hand off and they make the communication. They determine the way you're going to get information back and forth. They do the initial testing. And then once all the connections and the data formats are worked out, you know that you can now start working that data into your system. Again, you're not changing anything. Whether that person uses something traditional like an HL7 with a TCP IP and a port designation, or whether they're using something that they built in-house. The advantage of using a hub partner that's familiar with lots of different methodologies, there's nothing that can stump them. If they don't have it, they'll figure it out. It's important to do that. So, the reality is an API is great, but an API doesn't solve the problem. There's so much more to APIs or integrations, because really it's just integration. It's how you do it. Integrations range from web services to port and IP to SFTP file transfer to text files to email. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So the idea that an API, I've got an API and it's done, it's just not the reality out there. And building individual APIs for individual clients that you have, that sounds like a great idea. You can customize it for that one particular client, get the most out of it. But what happens when you got another client or another or another? Or what happens if they make a change? So our experience has been APIs are great and everybody should do it and they are in the right direction, but you've got to be conscious that there's more to it than just building an API. It's maintaining that API, it's managing failures, it's managing security, and finding a good partner to be able to do that will really benefit you. So again, that's a little bit about APIs. I'm gonna turn it back over to Lynda at this point.
Well, thank you, Josh. And I know that we have a couple of questions here. Let me take a look. One of the first questions I'm seeing is, we have a cloud-based platform, but need to connect to a lot of on-premise software. How does that work?
That's actually a great question. For those that aren't familiar, there's basically two different ways software works. One of them is it's hosted in, you all heard of the Amazon Data Cloud. That's where the solution is, and they have multiple locations. Those are typically easier to get to. It's when a client will buy a piece of software, install it on their own servers behind their own firewall and security settings, it becomes much more difficult. Building an API should be no different. It's just how you connect to that data. We've had experiences in connecting with on-site locations, even to the point of we can create an own VPN to get into their network to be able to access that data. So, the reality is both are APIs, both have data go back and forth. It's just one is sometimes a little more difficult than the other and may require more work from the technical side on the client side. But that's, again, where a partner becomes valuable, is they know the questions to ask and the ways to get around some of the roadblocks you may have.
Thank you, Josh. I hope that, let us know if you need a little more detail. Another question, this is a good one. Do I need an API to connect to a hub or to integrate it all?
Again, another great question. Like I said, APIs are not the end all be all. If you want to create an API, fantastic. The reality, though, is you just need a way to get your data out of your system to your hub partner, and you need a way to get that data from the hub partner back into your system. A good hub partner should have the ability to adapt to you, should not require you to do anything specific. If you want to, for example, exchange information by a file format in a batch, great. If you want to have individual email messages with the data that gets sent to you so you can process them in your system, great. That should work. So you don't necessarily have to have an API. I would definitely say it's beneficial because you create consistency, you create a lot of monitoring and error handling ability and things that go along with that. But no, you don't have to have an API. Just keep in mind, you've got to have a way of getting that data back and forth within your database or within your system.
And this kind of plays off of that. Another question is, can a hub style integration handle a mix of real-time and batch processes, which I think you just touched on a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of different ways, and depending upon the type or area within healthcare that you're in, a lot of them are working in overnight batches, billing being an example of that. They really don't need the data real time. They just want a list of all the charges and all the patients at the end of the night. They'll run through them, put them into their system, do all the validation of the coverage, send off the charges, get the billing back, and all that goes along with that. Others want to have it real time. If you're doing, for example, remote reads for stat orders. You've got a system that has contracted with a teleradiology company to get their doctors to read and return a report in real time. You got to be able to handle that. So a good hub partner should be able to handle both. And again, from both sides of the equation, because it's great if they can handle both, but if they require that you send a batch, they process it and they send a batch, or send individual, okay. But what if they want to send individual messages throughout the day and they want their hub partner to be able to put those all together into a single file and send it off to the batch receiver on the other end? Well, a good hub partner should be able to do that. They shouldn't require you, again, to do anything specific that goes beyond what that one way of getting information in. So, to answer your question, yes, a hub partner should be able to handle both real-time and batch, both either batch in, batch out, or individual in and batch out. So both of those can work. I got a little wordy on that one, I apologize.
I don't think anyone minds. We do have one last question. are hub style integrations, I'm not sure I'm understanding this correctly. Do they take longer to deploy than a traditional end-to-end integration?
It's always a concern for anybody who wants to do this, especially if you're in the growth stage and you're trying to build more clients. A lot of times you want to get it up and get it working. Um, and traditionally, like I said, development takes time. So if you're building your own API and connecting it to the remote side, that often takes a long time to go through I got to develop it, I got to learn their process, I've got to learn this and learn that to be able to get it to work. Typically, any sort of partner that you have is going to speed that process up, and a hub partner is going to speed it up even more. The reason I say that is they're doing a lot of repetition. So if you've got a partner, a hub partner like Netdirector that has had experience in the industry, that has already done OAuth and certificate authorization, that's already done JSON SOAP and MMLLP and HL7 and FHIR and all the stuff that goes with it, then they're going to be able to take your needs, translate them into functional connections in a much shorter fashion. You also want to make sure that the partner that you're working with is doing configuration and not creation or development. That's kind of a small difference, but when you have a tool set that allows you to configure your connections and make those changes potentially on the fly, that's a whole different ballgame than I'm going to build you an integration that I have to develop and write the code for, which can often take a lot longer and usually becomes much more static. So if you've got a hub partner that is configuration based, it puts you a leg up in terms of speed. So yes, a partner will speed it up. A hub styles partner will speed it up as well, as long as that hub style partner is not trying to lock you into, well, this is the way we integrate with them, and that's the way you're going to do it, which I've heard from clients as well.
Thank you, Josh. I don't see any other questions, but would anybody like to jump on and ask Josh anything while you have an opportunity? Well, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you're welcome to reach out to me directly. Obviously, this will be sent to you as well. Feel free to hit us with any questions you like or any puzzles you're encountering, because we like a challenge, and we really appreciate your time today. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.